Of deep shame and an unstable sense of identity. Your truth is experienced by them not as feedback, but as annihilation. So they do what their disordered psychology demands. They strike first. They rewrite the story. They paint themselves as the victim and you as the unstable, jealous, cruel, unhinged, or dangerous one, often using language so emotionally charged that listeners feel compelled to take sides before they have even processed what was actually said. What makes this so devastating is that the people who believe them are not necessarily stupid, disloyal, or weak. They are simply human, and human cognition has predictable vulnerabilities the narcissist exploits with chilling precision. The first vulnerability is the primacy effect, the well-documented tendency for people to believe the first version of a story they hear and to interpret all subsequent information through that lens. The narcissist almost always speaks first, and they speak with the urgency of someone who has been wronged. The second vulnerability is emotional contagion. When someone shares a story with tears, trembling hands, or righteous anger, the listener's nervous system mirrors that emotional state, and the body's reaction is mistaken for evidence of truth. The third vulnerability is the human hunger for simple narratives. It is cognitively easier to believe there is a villain and a victim than to sit with the complexity of a relational pattern involving manipulation, projection, and intermittent reinforcement. The narcissist offers a simple story. You, telling the truth, are offering something far more nuanced. And nuance loses to certainty almost every time in social settings where people are not trained to detect manipulation. Then there is triangulation, perhaps the most insidious tool in the narcissistic arsenal. Triangulation occurs when the narcissist inserts a third party into the relational dynamic to create confusion, competition, jealousy, or alliance. They might tell your sister something you supposedly said, then tell you something your sister supposedly said, watching with quiet satisfaction as the two of you grow suspicious of each other. They might recruit what is sometimes called a flying monkey, a person who, knowingly or unknowingly, carries the narcissist's messages, monitors you, reports back, or pressures you to reconcile. The effect of triangulation is that you stop knowing who is safe. You begin to second guess every interaction. You start to feel paranoid, and then you start to feel ashamed of feeling paranoid, which is exactly the disoriented state the narcissist wants you in, because a disoriented person cannot organize a coherent defense. And so you find yourself isolated, often without fully understanding how it happened. Isolation is not always dramatic. It rarely looks like being locked in a room. More often, it looks like friendships quietly dissolving, invitations no longer arriving, family gatherings happening without you. A slow and steady shrinking of your world until you look around and realize the narcissist has effectively become the gatekeeper between you and the people you love. This is not coincidence. Isolation serves the narcissist because an isolated person is easier to control, easier to gaslight, easier to discredit, and far less likely to receive the outside validation that would help them see the manipulation clearly. The smear campaign and the isolation work together as a single coordinated strategy, even when the narcissist is not consciously aware of strategizing, because these behaviors are deeply ingrained patterns of a personality structure organized around control and self-protection. The emotional impact of all this is profound, and I want to name it clearly because so many survivors carry this pain in silence, believing something is wrong with them for hurting so much. Being smeared by someone who knew your vulnerabilities is a specific form of betrayal trauma, and betrayal trauma affects the brain differently than other forms of stress. It activates the same neural circuits involved in physical pain. It disrupts your sense of reality, your trust in your own perceptions, and your ability to feel safe in relationships. You may experience hypervigilance, intrusive thoughts, sleep disturbances, a chronic sense of dread, and what trauma specialists call a shattered assumptive world, meaning the collapse of the basic beliefs that allowed you to navigate life. Beliefs like people who love me will protect me, or the truth eventually comes out, or if I am a good person, good things will return to me. When those beliefs shatter, you are not broken. You are grieving. You are grieving a version of reality that turned out not to be real, and that grief is one of the most under-recognized forms of suffering in modern psychology. The long-term effects, if left unaddressed, can include complex post-traumatic stress responses, persistent anxiety, depressive episodes, difficulty trusting future relationships, chronic self-doubt, and a phenomenon sometimes described as the inner smear campaign, in which the narcissist's voice becomes internalized and you begin doing to yourself what they did to you, questioning your worth, your memory, your sanity, your goodness. Healing requires interrupting that internalized voice with deliberate, compassionate, and psychologically informed practices. And that is where we turn now, because understanding the wound is only half the work. The other half is learning how to live wisely inside a reality where this has happened to you. The first and most counterintuitive principle of protecting yourself from a smear campaign is to resist the powerful urge to defend yourself to everyone who has believed the lies. I know how unbearable that sounds. Every cell in your body is screaming to set the record straight, to show the evidence, to make them understand. But here is the psychological truth. People who have already aligned themselves with the narcissist's narrative are usually not in a cognitive state to receive contradicting information, because doing so would require them to admit they were deceived, which threatens their own self-image. This is known as cognitive dissonance, and most people resolve dissonance not by updating their beliefs, but by doubling down on them. The more you push, the more you confirm the story that you are unstable, obsessive, or aggressive. The most powerful response, paradoxically, is restraint. Time, consistency of character, and the natural unfolding of the narcissist's patterns with other people will do more to restore your reputation than any impassioned defense ever could. This does not mean staying silent forever. It means becoming strategic about where, when, and to whom you speak. With a small number of trusted people, those whose loyalty has been demonstrated rather than assumed, you can share the truth calmly, factually, without emotional flooding, allowing them to ask questions and process at their own pace. With everyone else, you let your life speak. You let your steadiness speak. You let your kindness to people who do not yet trust you speak. Reputation in the long run is built far more by patterns than by proclamations, and the narcissist's patterns will eventually become visible to anyone paying attention, because the disorder is not something they can sustainably hide. If you are finding value in what we are exploring together, I want to invite you again to subscribe, because the deeper psychological work of healing from narcissistic abuse unfolds across many conversations. And I want you to have access to every one of them as you continue rebuilding your life from the inside out. Now, let us talk about your nervous system, because no amount of strategic thinking will help you if your body is in a constant state of fight or flight. When you have been smeared, your sympathetic nervous system stays activated long after the immediate threat has passed. You may find yourself ruminating at 3 in the morning, rehearsing conversations that will never happen, scanning social media for signs of what people are saying, feeling your heart race when your phone buzzes. This is not weakness. This is your survival biology doing exactly what it was designed to do in the presence of social threat. Because for most of human evolution, being cast out of the tribe was a death sentence. Your brain is treating this like a life or death situation because, ancestrally, it was one. Healing requires gently teaching your nervous system that you are safe now, even though the social wound is real. Practices that down-regulate the nervous system, such as slow diaphragmatic breathing, extended exhales, grounding through the senses, gentle movement, time in nature, cold water on the face to activate the vagus nerve, and consistent sleep routines are not luxuries. They are clinical interventions for a body in distress, and they are foundational to every other form of recovery you will do. Once your nervous system begins to settle, you can start the deeper work of reclaiming your identity, because one of the most damaging effects of a smear campaign is identity erosion. When enough people treat you like the person the narcissist described, you can begin to wonder if there is some truth to it. you can start to lose touch with who you were before the abuse. Rebuilding identity requires deliberately returning to the things that have always been true about you, the values you have lived by, the moments you have shown up with integrity, the people you have loved well, the work you have done with care. Writing these things down is not vanity. It is psychological scaffolding. It is how you remind yourself, in moments of doubt, of the person you actually are, separate from the distorted reflection the narcissist offered the world. Boundaries in this context are not walls, they are clarifications. A boundary is not something you impose on the narcissist because they will not respect it. A boundary is something you hold within yourself about what you will and will not participate in. You may decide that you will not engage with messages designed to provoke you. You may decide that you will not attend gatherings where you know you will be ambushed. You may decide that you will not discuss the narcissist with people who report back to them. You may decide that certain family members, despite the love you have for them, cannot currently be in close contact with you because their loyalty is unclear. These are not punishments. They are acts of self-preservation, and they are how you stop bleeding energy into a system designed to drain you. It is also essential to grieve because under all the strategy and all the boundaries and all the nervous system work, there is real loss. You have lost relationships that mattered. You have lost a version of your story you thought was true. You have lost time, energy, and pieces of yourself you may never fully recover in the form they once existed. Grief that is not acknowledged becomes depression, bitterness, or chronic anxiety. Grief that is acknowledged, felt in the body, given language and tears and time, becomes wisdom. It becomes the soil from which a different kind of life can grow, one in which you are far harder to deceive, far slower to give your trust away, and far more attuned to the difference between people who love you and people who perform love at you. As you heal, you will also need to rebuild your support system with extraordinary care, because the wrong support can re-injure you. Seek out people who can hold complexity, who do not need you to be a flat character in a simple story, who can sit with your anger without rushing you past it and sit with your sadness without trying to fix it. Therapy with someone trained specifically in narcissistic abuse and trauma can be transformative, because generic relationship advice often misses the specific dynamics at play and can inadvertently reinforce self-blame. Support groups, when chosen carefully, can also remind you that you are not alone, that what happened to you has happened to many others, and that recovery, while not linear, is absolutely possible. There will be moments, perhaps many of them, when you are tempted to retaliate, to expose, to publicly humiliate the person who tried to destroy